The scream caught in Violet's throat died to silence as she pressed herself deeper into the shadows of the horse stall, her breath coming in ragged gasps that she fought to control. Blood stained the torn sleeve of her dress, and dirt caked every inch of exposed skin. But she dared not move, dared not even breathe too loudly as footsteps approached the barn door. It was September of 1878, and she had been running for 3 days straight through the Arizona territory, knowing that if Marcus found her this time, there would be no mercy left in him at all. The barn door creaked open, flooding the dusty interior with the golden light of late afternoon. Violet's heart hammered so hard, she thought it might burst from her chest as a tall silhouette filled the doorway. She could make out broad shoulders, the unmistakable shape of a hat, and the easy stance of a man comfortable in his own domain. This was his property, and she was trespassing, but going back out into the open meant certain death. "Easy there, Thunder," the man's voice rumbled, deep and calm, as he spoke to one of the horses. "Let me get you some water before supper." Violet bit her lip hard enough to taste blood, willing herself to become one with the shadows. The man moved through the barn with practiced efficiency, his boots scuffing against the packed dirt floor. He was humming something low and melodic, a tune she did not recognize. For a moment, she thought perhaps he would finish his work and leave without ever knowing she was there. Then Thunder, the large black stallion in the stall beside her hiding place, snorted and tossed his head, his dark eyes fixed on the corner where Violet crouched. The man stopped humming. "What is it, boy?" His footsteps changed direction, moving closer to her position. "We got a coyote in here?" Violet squeezed her eyes shut, every muscle in her body coiled tight as a spring. She could run, but she knew she would not make it far. Her legs were shaking from exhaustion, and the wound on her arm throbbed with each heartbeat. She had nothing left. The footsteps stopped just outside the stall. There was a long moment of silence, and then the man spoke again, his voice much quieter now. "Miss, I can see you there in the corner. I am not going to hurt you, but I would appreciate it if you would come out where I can see you proper." Violet's eyes snapped open. She stared up at the man now standing at the stall entrance, backlit by the fading sunlight. She could not make out his features clearly, but there was something in his posture that was not threatening. Not yet, anyway. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking from thirst. "Please, do not send me away. He will kill me if he finds me." The man was quiet for a long moment, and she watched as he slowly removed his hat, holding it in both hands. Now she could see his face more clearly. He looked to be in his late 20s, with dark hair that curled slightly at the edges and a strong jawline covered in several days' worth of stubble. His eyes, even in the dim light, were a striking shade of hazel, and they studied her with an intensity that made her want to shrink further into the shadows. "Who is going to kill you?" he asked, his voice still calm and measured. "My husband," Violet said, and the words tasted like ash in her mouth. "Please, I just need somewhere to hide for the night. I will be gone by morning. You will never know I was here." The man replaced his hat and took a small step back, giving her space. "You are hurt," he observed, nodding toward her bloody sleeve. "That needs tending, and you look like you have not eaten in days." "I am fine," Violet lied, even as her vision swam slightly. "No, you are not," he said simply. "My name is Fletcher Walsh. This is my ranch, about 5 miles outside Old Tucson. You are safe here, miss. Whatever trouble you are running from, it stays outside my property line." Violet wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe that such a place could exist, where Marcus could not reach her, where his fists and his rage could not find her. But she had learned the hard way that kindness was often just another trap. "Why would you help me?" she asked, unable to keep the suspicion from her voice. "You do not even know me." Fletcher Walsh tilted his head slightly, considering her question. "My mama raised me to help folks in need," he said, "and unless my eyes are deceiving me, you are definitely in need. Now, are you going to come out of that stall on your own, or am I going to have to carry you?" Despite everything, despite the fear and exhaustion and pain, Violet felt the smallest spark of defiance flicker to life in her chest. "You will not touch me," she said, her voice stronger now. Something that might have been approval flickered across Fletcher's face. "Fair enough, but you need to come inside. That arm needs cleaning before infection sets in, and you need food and water. I have a spare room you can use. Door has a lock on the inside." That last detail made Violet pause. A lock on the inside. He was offering her a way to protect herself, even from him. It was such a small thing, but it spoke volumes. Slowly, using the stall wall for support, Violet pushed herself to her feet. Her legs trembled beneath her, and for a moment she thought they might give out entirely. Fletcher took a half step forward, his hand reaching out instinctively, but he stopped himself when he saw her flinch. "Sorry," he said. "Habit, you sure you can walk?" Violet nodded, not trusting her voice. She took one step, then another, her hand never leaving the support of the wall. When she finally reached the stall entrance, Fletcher stepped aside to give her a wide berth. Up close, she could see him more clearly now. He was tall, probably a few inches over 6 feet, with the lean, muscled build of a man who worked hard for his living. His face was weathered by sun and wind, but there were smile lines around his eyes that suggested he laughed more often than he frowned. "Can you make it to the house?" he asked, watching her carefully. Violet looked toward the open barn door, where she could see a modest ranch house perhaps 50 yards away. It might as well have been 50 miles, but she nodded anyway, pride refusing to let her admit just how close to collapse she really was. She made it about 10 steps before her legs finally gave out. She felt herself falling, and then strong arms caught her, lifting her as easily as if she weighed nothing at all. She wanted to fight, wanted to scream and kick and demand to be put down, but her body had reached its limit. Instead, she found herself pressed against Fletcher's chest, hearing the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. "I have got you," he said quietly. "Just rest now. You are safe." And despite every instinct that screamed at her not to trust, not to believe, not to hope, Violet let her eyes drift closed and allowed herself to be carried. When Violet woke, it was to the sensation of a cool, damp cloth being pressed gently against her forehead. She jerked away instinctively, her eyes flying open, her body tensing for a fight that never came. "Easy," a woman's voice said. "You are all right, honey. Nobody here is going to hurt you." Violet blinked several times, trying to orient herself. She was lying in a real bed, softer than anything she had felt in months, with clean white sheets pulled up to her chin. The room was small but tidy, with a window that showed the last purple streaks of sunset. An oil lamp burned on a bedside table, casting warm light across the face of the woman sitting beside her. She was older, perhaps in her late 40s, with gray-streaked brown hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her face was kind, with the same sort of smile lines Fletcher had, and her eyes were a warm brown that crinkled at the corners as she smiled at Violet. "There you are," the woman said. "You gave Fletcher quite a scare, passing out like that. I am Rosa Walsh, Fletcher's mother. He carried you in here and asked me to tend to you. I have cleaned and bandaged that cut on your arm. It is not deep, thank the Lord, but it will be sore for a few days." Violet looked down at her arm, now wrapped in clean white bandages. Someone had also changed her clothes. Instead of her torn, filthy dress, she now wore a soft cotton nightgown. "My dress," she said, her voice hoarse. "Soaking in the wash basin," Rosa said. "Do not worry, we will get it cleaned up for you. Though, if you do not mind my saying so, it looked like it had seen better days even before you tore it up running through the brush. I have a few dresses that might fit you, if you need them." Violet felt tears prick at her eyes. Kindness felt so foreign now, so dangerous. She did not know how to accept it without waiting for the trap to spring shut. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. Rosa set the cloth aside and folded her hands in her lap. "Because you need help, child, and because I can see in your eyes the same look I saw in my own mirror 20 years ago when I was running from my first husband." Violet's breath caught. "You were?" Rosa nodded slowly. "Married him when I was 17. He was charming at first, said all the right things. But after the wedding, I learned that he had a temper and fists that move faster than his brain. I lasted 2 years before I finally got the courage to run. Made it all the way to Arizona territory before he stopped looking for me. That is where I met Fletcher's father, God rest his soul. He was a good man, the kind who proved to me that not all men are monsters." "How did you know he was different?" Violet asked, her voice barely audible. "I did not at first," Rosa admitted. "It took time and patience, and a whole lot of him proving that his words matched his actions. But he did prove it, every single day, until I finally let myself believe it. Fletcher is the same way. He has got his father's heart." Before Violet could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. Rosa stood and opened it a crack, then wider when she saw who it was. Fletcher stood in the hallway, his hat in his hands again, his expression uncertain. "Is she awake?" he asked. "She is, and she is doing much better," Rosa said. She turned back to Violet. "I will go fix you something to eat. You must be starving. Fletcher, you behave yourself, and do not tire her out with too many questions." Rosa squeezed her son's arm as she passed him, and Violet caught the meaningful look the older woman gave him. Fletcher nodded and stepped into the room, leaving the door open behind him. He did not approach the bed, instead leaning against the wall near the window, maintaining a respectful distance. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better," Violet said, and it was true. The throbbing in her arm had dulled to a manageable ache, and the softness of the bed beneath her felt like heaven. "Thank you for helping me. You and your mother." "You do not need to thank us," Fletcher said. "Just doing what is right, though I reckon I should know your name, seeing as how you were staying in my house." Violet hesitated. Names had power. If Marcus came looking, if he asked questions in town, her name could lead him right to her. But something about the steady way Fletcher looked at her, the patience in his eyes, made her want to trust him. "Violet," she said finally. "Violet Lancaster." Fletcher nodded. "It is good to meet you properly, Miss Lancaster. I wish it were under better circumstances." "Just Violet, please," she said. "I do not think I have any right to formalities anymore." "Everyone has a right to respect," Fletcher said firmly, "no matter what their circumstances. But if you prefer Violet, then Violet it is." There was another pause, and Violet could see Fletcher choosing his words carefully. "Your husband," he said finally. "Is he likely to come looking for you here?" Violet's stomach clenched with fear at the mention of Marcus. "I do not know," she admitted. "I have been running for 3 days. I tried to cover my tracks, but Marcus is not stupid. If he figures out which direction I went, he might search the ranches around Old Tucson. Then we will be ready if he comes," Fletcher said simply. "But he is not getting near you, I promise you that." "You do not understand," Violet said, sitting up straighter despite the protest from her exhausted muscles. "Marcus is not just any man. He is Marcus Lancaster, the owner of the Lancaster Mining Company. He has money and influence and connections. If he wants to find me, he will find me. And if you try to stop him, he will destroy you too." Fletcher's expression hardened slightly. "I have heard of Lancaster. He has been trying to buy mineral rights on some of the land around here. From what I understand, he does not take no for an answer." "He does not take no about anything," Violet said bitterly. "That is why I ran, because I finally realized that no matter how much I tried to be the perfect wife, no matter how hard I tried to please him, it was never going to be enough. He was always going to find a reason to be angry, always going to find a reason to hurt me." Fletcher's jaw tightened, and she saw his hands curl into fists at his sides, but his voice remained calm when he spoke. "How long were you married to him?" 2 years, Violet said. "We married in San Francisco when I was 18. My parents had died 6 months before, and I had no other family. Marcus was a friend of my father's business partner. He seemed kind and stable, and I thought I was making a smart choice. I thought I was being practical." She laughed bitterly. "I was such a fool." "You were not a fool," Fletcher said with quiet intensity. "He was a liar. There is a difference." Violet looked at him, really looked at him, and saw genuine anger in his eyes. But it was not directed at her. It was directed at Marcus, at the situation, at the injustice of it all. It was such a foreign concept that she barely knew how to process it. "Why do you care?" she asked. "You do not know me?" Fletcher was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "My father died when I was 15, he said, thrown from a horse and hit his head on a rock. It was quick at least, but before he died, he made me promise to always look out for folks who could not look out for themselves. He said that is what separates decent men from the other kind. So, I reckon that is why I care, because he taught me to." Before Violet could respond, Rosa appeared in the doorway with a tray. "Soup and bread," she announced. "Nothing too heavy for your stomach right now. You can eat more later if you keep this down." Fletcher straightened up from the wall. "I will let you eat," he said. "Get some rest. We can talk more tomorrow, figure out a plan." "A plan?" Violet repeated. "For keeping you safe," Fletcher said simply. "You are welcome to stay here as long as you need. We will work out the details in the morning." He left before Violet could argue, closing the door gently behind him. Rosa set the tray across Violet's lap and handed her a spoon. "Eat," she instructed. "You are going to need your strength." Violet looked down at the bowl of soup, steam rising from the rich broth. Her eyes filled with tears again, and this time she could not stop them from spilling over. "Why are you both being so kind to me?" she whispered. Rosa reached out and gently squeezed her hand. "Because, honey, you deserve kindness. And because we remember what it is like to need help and not know where to turn. Now, eat up before it gets cold." The soup was the best thing Violet had ever tasted, and she ate every drop of it before exhaustion pulled her back under. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was that maybe, just maybe, she had finally found a place where she could catch her breath. When Violet woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the window, and she could hear the sounds of the ranch coming to life. Roosters crowing, horses whinnying, the distant lowing of cattle. For a moment, she forgot where she was, and panic seized her chest. Then she remembered Fletcher Walsh's ranch. Safety. At least for now. She sat up slowly, testing her body's response. Her arms still ached, but the rest of her felt considerably better after a night of real sleep in a real bed. Someone had left a pitcher of water and a basin on the dresser, along with a clean dress that looked like it would fit her. The dress was simple but well made, a dark blue cotton with pearl buttons. Violet washed her face and hands, marveling at the luxury of clean water. She changed into the blue dress, which fit reasonably well, though it was a bit loose in the waist. Rosa must have been thinner. She ran her fingers through her tangled hair, trying to work out the worst of the knots, and then made her way to the door. She had expected it to be locked from the outside, expected to find herself a prisoner despite their kindness. But the door opened easily when she turned the knob, revealing a narrow hallway that opened into a main living area. The house was modest but comfortable, with hand-hewn furniture and colorful rugs covering the wooden floors. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and the windows were large, letting in plenty of morning light. Rosa was working in the kitchen area, kneading dough on a large wooden table. "Good morning," Rosa said, looking up with a smile. "You have some color back in your cheeks. That is a good sign. Coffee is on the stove if you want some." "Thank you," Violet said, moving slowly into the room. She felt strange and out of place, like an intruder in someone else's life. "Where is Fletcher?" "Out checking the fence line on the north pasture," Rosa said. "He will be back around noon. In the meantime, why do not you sit down and have some breakfast? I have got biscuits in the oven and bacon on the stove." Violet's stomach growled in response, and Rosa laughed. "I will take that as a yes. Sit. Sit." Violet sat at the table, watching as Rosa efficiently assembled a plate of food. The older woman moved with the easy grace of someone completely comfortable in her environment, and Violet felt a pang of envy. What would it be like to feel so at home in your own skin, so certain of your place in the world? "I spoke with Fletcher last night after you fell asleep," Rosa said, setting the plate in front of Violet along with a cup of steaming coffee. "He told me about your husband, about the mining company. That is a dangerous man to be running from, honey." "I know," Violet said quietly. "That is why I will leave today. I cannot put you and Fletcher in danger. If Marcus finds out you helped me, he will make you pay for it." Rosa sat down across from her, her expression serious. "And where will you go? Do you have family somewhere? Friends who can take you in?" Violet shook her head. "No, I have no one. I thought maybe I could get to California, find work in one of the cities, change my name, start over." "With no money and no references?" Rosa said gently. "Honey, I do not mean to be harsh, but you would not last a week on your own. Men like your husband have long arms and deep pockets. If he wants to find you, he will find you. You need allies, not isolation." "I do not want anyone else to get hurt because of me," Violet said, her voice breaking. "I have caused enough damage already." "You have not caused anything," Rosa said firmly. "Your husband's cruelty is not your fault, and neither is his anger. You are the victim here, Violet. Do not let him make you believe otherwise." Violet stared down at her plate, blinking back tears. "I just want to be free," she whispered. "I just want to live without fear." "Then stay," Rosa said simply. "Stay here, help out around the ranch, earn your keep if that makes you feel better about it. Give yourself time to heal and figure out your next steps. And let Fletcher and me worry about your husband if he comes sniffing around." "I do not understand why you would do this for me," Violet said. "You do not owe me anything." Rosa reached across the table and took Violet's hand. When I ran from my first husband, a family in New Mexico took me in. They gave me work in their store, let me sleep in their back room, and never asked for anything in return. When I asked them why, they said the same thing I am going to tell you now. Because sometimes the only thing standing between someone and total destruction is a helping hand, and if you are in a position to offer that hand, you offer it. Violet felt something crack open in her chest, some hard shell she had built around her heart to survive Marcus's cruelty. "Thank you," she managed to say. "I do not know how I will ever repay you." "You do not need to repay anything," Rosa said. "Just get better, get stronger, and when you are ready, pay it forward to someone else who needs help." They sat in companionable silence while Violet ate, and for the first time in years, she felt something that might have been hope stirring in her chest. Fletcher returned around midday, dusty and sweating from his work. He pulled off his hat when he saw Violet sitting on the porch, a basket of mending in her lap that Rosa had given her to keep her hands busy. "Afternoon," he said, his voice friendly but cautious. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," Violet said, and she meant it. "Your mother said I could stay for a while, help out around the ranch, if that is all right with you." Fletcher climbed the porch steps and leaned against the railing, studying her with those careful hazel eyes. "It is more than all right," he said. "We can always use an extra pair of hands, though I do not want you overdoing it until that arm heals proper." "I can handle mending and cooking," Violet said, "and I am good with animals if you need help with the horses." "You ride?" Fletcher asked, sounding surprised. "I grew up on a small farm in Northern California before my parents died," Violet said. "We had horses. I practically lived in the saddle as a girl." She felt a wave of sadness wash over her at the memory. Those had been simpler times, happier times. "Well, that is good to know," Fletcher said. "I have got a mare that has been skittish since I bought her at auction last month. Maybe you can help me settle her down." "I can try," Violet said. Fletcher nodded and pushed off from the railing. "I am going to wash up before lunch. Ma sent me to tell you that food will be ready in about 10 minutes. He disappeared into the house, and Violet found herself smiling slightly. There was something steady about Fletcher Walsh, something solid and reliable. He did not make grand promises or flowery speeches. He just stated facts and followed through on what he said he would do. After 2 years of Marcus's volatile moods and broken promises, Fletcher's consistency was like a balm to her wounded soul. Over the next few days, Violet fell into a rhythm on the ranch. She woke early and helped Rosa with breakfast, then spent her mornings mending clothes, tending the vegetable garden, or helping with the endless task of keeping the house clean. In the afternoons, when the heat became oppressive, she would sit on the porch and shell beans or snap peas while Rosa worked on her quilting. Fletcher was often gone during the day, working the ranch with his 2 hired hands, Carlos and Ben. But he always came back for the midday meal, and again in the evening for supper. He was quiet at first, speaking only when necessary, but Violet began to notice small kindnesses. The way he always made sure she had the coolest spot at the table, near the window where the breeze came through. The way he fixed the sticky latch on her bedroom door without being asked. The way he brought her a jar of salve for her healing arm that he had bought in town, saying only that Ben swore by it for cuts. One afternoon, about a week after Violet arrived, Fletcher found her in the barn, sitting on an upturned bucket and crying quietly into her hands. He froze in the doorway, clearly uncertain whether to approach or retreat. "Sorry," Violet said, hastily wiping at her face. "I did not mean to disturb anything. I just needed a moment." Fletcher came closer, moving slowly like he was approaching a skittish horse. "You are not disturbing anything," he said. "But are you all right? Did something happen?" Violet shook her head. "No, nothing happened. That is the problem. Everything here is so peaceful, so kind, and I keep waiting for it to fall apart. I keep waiting for Marcus to show up, or for you to change your mind about helping me, or for something terrible to happen. I cannot seem to just accept that I might actually be safe here." Fletcher was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled another bucket over and sat down across from her, his elbows resting on his knees. "Fear does not just disappear because your circumstances change," he said slowly. "It takes time to unlearn the habits of survival. Give yourself permission to be scared, Violet. You do not have to pretend everything is fine all the time. But you and your mother have been so good to me," Violet said. "I feel like I owe it to you to be grateful and happy, not falling apart in your barn." "You can be grateful and still be scared," Fletcher said. "Those things are not mutually exclusive. And for what it is worth, I think you are doing remarkably well, all things considered. You have been through hell, and you are still standing. That takes strength." Violet looked up at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, and felt that crack in her heart widen a little more. "Thank you," she whispered. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the horses moving in their stalls and the distant sound of cattle lowing in the pasture. Finally, Fletcher spoke again. "I went into Old Tucson yesterday," he said. "Asked around, subtle-like, to see if anyone had heard about a woman going missing from the mining company. Nobody had heard anything, which probably means your husband has not reported you missing to the law." "He would not," Violet said. That would mean admitting that his wife ran away from him. Marcus's pride could not handle that. "He will be looking for me privately." "That is what I figured," Fletcher said. "Which means we need to be smart about this. If you go into town, folks will talk. Word will get back to him eventually. So maybe for now, you stay here on the ranch where it is safe." "I cannot hide forever," Violet said. "No," Fletcher agreed. "But you can hide long enough to figure out your options. And in the meantime, you are building up your strength, learning the ranch, making yourself useful. If the time comes when you need to run again, you will be in a better position to survive." Violet nodded slowly. It made sense, even if the idea of staying here indefinitely made her nervous. She was not used to relying on other people, not anymore. Marcus had taught her that dependence was just another form of weakness, another way for people to control you. But Fletcher and Rosa were different. They did not seem to want anything from her, except her presence and her help around the ranch. There were no strings attached to their kindness, no debt being tallied up to be called in later. "All right," she said finally. "I will stay, at least for a while." Fletcher smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "Good," he said simply. "Now, are you ready to meet that skittish mare I told you about? I could use your expertise." Violet stood up, brushing the dust from her borrowed dress. "Lead the way." The mare was a beautiful chestnut with a white blaze down her face, but she shied away when Fletcher tried to approach her stall. "I got her cheap at auction because nobody else wanted to deal with her," he explained. "The auctioneer said she had been mistreated by her previous owner. I figured she just needed someone patient to work with her." Violet felt an immediate kinship with the frightened horse. She knew exactly what it felt like to flinch away from reaching hands, to expect pain instead of comfort. "What is her name?" "Did not have one when I bought her," Fletcher said. "I have just been calling her Girl." "Can I name her?" Violet asked. "Sure," Fletcher said. "She is yours to work with if you want her." Violet approached the stall slowly, keeping her movements calm and predictable. The mare watched her with rolling eyes, her ears pinned back. But Violet did not try to touch her. She just stood there, speaking in a low, soothing voice. "It is all right, sweetheart. Nobody here is going to hurt you. You are safe now. I know you do not believe that yet, but you will. I promise you will." She kept talking, kept offering that steady stream of reassurance, until gradually the mare's ears came forward and some of the tension left her body. Violet stayed there for almost an hour, just talking and being present, until finally the mare took a tentative step closer and stretched her neck out to sniff Violet's hand. "There you go," Violet murmured. "See? Nothing to be afraid of." She glanced back at Fletcher and found him watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," he said quickly. "You were just good with her, natural." "I understand her," Violet said simply. "I know what it is like to be afraid." Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding that went beyond words. Fletcher nodded slowly and said, "I think you should call her Hope." Violet smiled, really smiled, for the first time since she had arrived. "Hope, I like that." Over the following weeks, Violet spent hours every day with Hope, slowly building the mare's trust. She would sit in the stall and read aloud from Rosa's collection of books, or she would brush the mare's coat until it gleamed, or she would simply stand there and keep Hope company. Gradually, the mare began to relax, to accept Violet's presence, and eventually to seek out her touch. It was a slow process, but Violet found it deeply satisfying. Every small victory with Hope felt like proof that healing was possible, that trust could be rebuilt, that fear did not have to be permanent. Fletcher often joined her in the barn, working on his own horses while Violet worked with Hope. They fell into an easy companionship, talking about small things, the weather, the cattle, funny stories from Fletcher's childhood. Violet found herself opening up in return, sharing carefully edited stories from her own past, the happy memories from before her parents died, before Marcus. She learned that Fletcher was 26, just 2 years older than her, that he loved this ranch with a fierce devotion, every acre of it earned through his own hard work after his father died, that he read poetry in his spare time, though he was shy about admitting it, that he had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh despite herself. And slowly, almost without realizing it, Violet found herself looking forward to his presence, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the low rumble of his laugh, the capable strength of his hands as he worked, the patience he showed with the animals, the respect he showed to everyone around him. It was dangerous, she knew, to let herself feel anything for Fletcher Walsh. She was still married, still in danger, still broken in ways she was not sure could ever be fixed. But her heart did not seem to care about logic or self-preservation. It was reaching for him like a flower reaching for the sun. One evening in late October, Violet was helping Rosa clean up after supper when Fletcher came in from the barn with a troubled expression. "We might have a problem," he said without preamble. "Carlos said he saw a man in town today asking questions about a woman matching your description. Said he was offering money for information." Violet's blood ran cold. "Marcus," she breathed. "Could be," Fletcher said. "Or someone he hired to find you. Either way, it means he's getting close." Rosa immediately moved to Violet's side, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "What do we do?" Fletcher's jaw was set in a hard line. "We keep her hidden. No trips to town, no working outside where someone could see her from the road. And we need to be ready in case he shows up here." "He will kill me if he finds me," Violet said, her voice shaking. "He swore he would if I ever tried to leave him." "He is not going to find you," Fletcher said with absolute certainty. "And even if he does, he is not getting anywhere near you. I promise you that, Violet." "You cannot fight him," Violet said desperately. "He has men, Fletcher, hired guns. If you try to stop him, he will destroy you." Fletcher crossed the room until he was standing directly in front of her. He did not touch her, but his presence was solid and reassuring. "I do not care how many men he has or how much money he can throw around. You are under my protection now, and I do not break my promises. Do you understand me?" Violet looked up into his eyes and saw only fierce determination. No doubt, no hesitation, no fear. Just absolute conviction. And despite everything, despite all her reasons to be afraid, she found herself believing him. "All right," she whispered. The next few days were tense. Violet stayed inside the house, away from windows, jumping at every unexpected sound. Fletcher and his ranch hands took turns keeping watch, and Rosa kept a shotgun propped by the front door. But nobody came. The days stretched into a week, then 2, with no sign of Marcus or his men. Slowly, Violet began to relax again. Maybe Carlos had been mistaken. Maybe the man asking questions had been looking for someone else entirely. Maybe Marcus had given up and moved on to easier prey. She should have known better than to hope. It was a cold November morning when 3 riders appeared on the horizon, heading straight for the ranch house. Fletcher was out with the cattle, and Rosa had gone into the storm cellar to bring up preserves for the week's meals. Violet was alone in the kitchen when she looked out the window and saw them coming. Her heart stopped. She would recognize that figure anywhere, the way he sat his horse like he owned the world. Marcus had found her. For a moment, pure panic froze her in place. Then survival instinct kicked in, and she ran for her bedroom, slamming the door and turning the lock with shaking hands. She could hear hoofbeats now, coming closer, and then the sound of men dismounting, heavy footsteps on the porch, a fist pounding on the door. "I know you are in there, Violet," Marcus's voice carried clearly through the walls. "Open this door right now, or I will break it down." Violet pressed her back against the far wall of her bedroom, her breath coming in short gasps. She looked around frantically for a weapon, anything she could use to defend herself, but there was nothing except a water pitcher on the dresser. "Violet!" Marcus roared. "You think you can run from me? You think you can humiliate me like this and get away with it? Get out here now!" The front door shook with the force of his blows. Violet heard wood splintering and knew it would not hold much longer. She was trapped. There was no way out, no escape, nowhere to run. Then she heard a new sound, hoofbeats coming fast. and Fletcher's voice cold and hard in a way she had never heard before. "Step away from that door." Violet ran to her window and looked out. Fletcher was there, sitting tall on Thunder, with Carlos and Ben flanking him on their own mounts. All three men had rifles in their hands, and the barrels were pointing directly at Marcus and his hired guns. Marcus turned, his handsome face twisted with rage. "This is none of your business, cowboy. That is my wife in there, and I am taking her home." "Like hell you are," Fletcher said flatly. "Violet is under my protection, and she is not going anywhere with you." "You do not have any legal right to keep her here," Marcus snarled. "She is my wife, my property, and if you do not stand aside, I will have you arrested for kidnapping." "Go ahead and try," Fletcher said, "but the sheriff in Old Tucson is a friend of mine, and I reckon he will be real interested to hear about how Violet got all those bruises and cuts when she showed up here. Pretty sure the law frowns on beating your wife, even in Arizona territory." Marcus's face flushed an ugly red. "You do not know what you are talking about. My wife is unbalanced, prone to fits and delusions. Anything she told you is a lie." "She has not told me much of anything," Fletcher said. "But I have got eyes. I can see what you did to her, and I can sure as hell see what kind of man you are just by looking at you. So here is how this is going to work. You are going to get back on your horse and ride away from my property. And you are going to leave Violet alone from now on. If you do not, I will make sure every newspaper in the territory hears about how Marcus Lancaster beats women. I wonder how that will affect your business prospects." Marcus took a step forward, his hand moving toward the gun at his hip. Instantly, all three rifles came up, aimed directly at his chest. His hired guns shifted nervously but did not draw their own weapons. "I would not do that if I were you," Fletcher said quietly. "We have got you outnumbered, outgunned, and you are standing on my land. The law is on my side here, Lancaster. You have got no play." For a long moment, Marcus just stood there, his face a mask of fury. Violet watched from the window, her heart in her throat, certain that violence was about to erupt. Then Marcus seemed to regain control of himself. He smiled, cold and calculated. "Fine," he said. "Keep the stupid whore. She was worthless anyway. But do not think this is over, Walsh. I will ruin you for this. I will buy every ranch in this valley just to make sure you have nowhere to sell your cattle. I will destroy you so completely that you will wish you had never met her." "Get off my land," Fletcher said, his voice like ice. Marcus swung up onto his horse. "You are making a big mistake," he said. "Both of you." He wheeled his horse around and spurred it into a gallop, his men following close behind. Fletcher, Carlos, and Ben stayed mounted, rifles at the ready, until the three riders were nothing but dust on the horizon. Only then did Fletcher dismount and run for the house. He burst through the splintered front door calling her name. "Violet! Violet! Are you all right?" She was already coming out of her bedroom, her legs shaking so badly she could barely walk. Fletcher was there in an instant, and without thinking, she threw herself into his arms. He caught her and held her tight, one hand cradling the back of her head as she sobbed into his chest. "I have got you," he murmured. "You are safe. He is gone. I have got you." Rosa came running up from the storm cellar, having heard the commotion. "What happened? Was that him?" "It was," Fletcher said. "But he is gone now. Carlos, Ben, I want you to take shifts watching the property line for the next few days. If he comes back, I want to know about it immediately." The two ranch hands nodded and headed back out. Rosa moved to Violet's side, gently stroking her hair. "Come on, honey, let us get you some tea. You are shaking like a leaf." But Violet could not seem to let go of Fletcher. She clung to him like a drowning woman clings to driftwood, and he held her just as tightly, his strong arms a barrier between her and the rest of the world. "He said he was going to ruin you," she finally managed to say. "Fletcher, I am so sorry. I should never have stayed. I have brought nothing but trouble to your door." "Stop that," Fletcher said firmly. He pulled back just enough to look down at her, his hands cupping her face. "You are not trouble, Violet. You are not a burden, and I do not care what Lancaster threatens. He does not scare me." "But he could destroy your ranch," Violet protested. "Everything you have worked for." "Then I will build it back up again," Fletcher said simply. "Some things are more important than money or land, Violet. And you are one of those things." Violet stared at him, her breath catching at the intensity in his eyes. There was something there, something that made her heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "Fletcher," she whispered, but she did not know what else to say. He seemed to catch himself, seemed to realize how close they were standing, how intimately he was touching her. He dropped his hands and stepped back, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Sorry," he said. "I did not mean to overstep." "You did not," Violet said quickly. Thank you. For protecting me, for standing up to Marcus, for everything." Fletcher nodded, looking uncomfortable with the praise. "It is what any decent man would do," he said. But Violet knew that was not true. Most men would have turned her away, too afraid of Marcus's power and influence to risk helping her. Fletcher Walsh was different. He was special. And she was starting to realize that what she felt for him went far beyond gratitude. The next few weeks passed without further incident. There were no more visits from Marcus, no more men asking questions in town. It seemed that Fletcher's threat had worked, or at least convinced Marcus that pursuing Violet was more trouble than it was worth. Slowly, life on the ranch returned to normal. Violet continued working with Hope, who was now calm enough to accept a saddle and bridle. She helped Rosa with the endless tasks of running a household. She learned to bake bread from scratch, to preserve vegetables for the winter, to mend leather and patch quilts. And she spent time with Fletcher, more time than was probably wise, given the growing feelings she was trying desperately to ignore. But she could not seem to help herself. He drew her like a magnet, and she found excuses to be wherever he was, bringing him water when he worked in the hot sun, helping him curry the horses in the evening, sitting on the porch after supper and watching the stars come out while they talked about everything and nothing. Rosa watched this growing closeness with knowing eyes, but said nothing. She simply smiled and made sure to give them plenty of opportunities to be alone together. It was early December when everything changed. Fletcher had ridden out early to check the fence line on the south pasture, and Violet had decided to take Hope out for her first real ride. The mare had progressed beautifully, responding to Violet's gentle guidance with trust and eagerness. They rode along the creek that bordered the Walsh property, enjoying the cool morning air and the beauty of the desert landscape. Violet was so caught up in the moment that she almost did not notice the rider approaching until he was nearly upon them. Her heart leapt with fear, but it was not Marcus. It was a young man she did not recognize, dressed in the dusty clothes of a ranch hand. He touched his hat respectfully when he saw her. "Excuse me, madam," he said. "Are you Miss Lancaster?" Violet tensed, her hand tightening on Hope's reins. "Who is asking?" "My name is Jimmy Porter. I work for the Copper Ridge Mine, about 20 miles east of here. I have got a message for you from your husband." "I do not want any messages from him," Violet said, turning Hope to leave. "Please, madam, just hear me out," Jimmy said quickly. "Mr. Lancaster wanted me to tell you that he has decided to give you a divorce. He had papers drawn up, legal and everything. He said if you sign them, he will let you go with no trouble. You will be free." Violet stopped, her mind reeling. A divorce? Marcus was willing to let her go? It seemed too good to be true. "Why would he do that?" she asked suspiciously. Jimmy shrugged. "I do not know, madam. I am just delivering the message. He said if you want the papers, come to the Copper Ridge office tomorrow at noon. Come alone, sign the papers, and you will never have to see him again." Every instinct Violet had was screaming that this was a trap, but the possibility of legal freedom, of truly being free of Marcus, was too tempting to ignore. "I will think about it," she said finally. Jimmy nodded and rode away. Violet turned Hope back toward the ranch, her mind spinning. Should she tell Fletcher? He would never let her go alone, which meant he might try to stop her from going at all. But this could be her only chance to be truly free. She was still wrestling with the decision when she returned to the barn and found Fletcher waiting for her. He helped her dismount and immediately saw the troubled expression on her face. "What happened?" he asked. "Did someone bother you out there?" Violet hesitated, then told him about Jimmy Porter and the message from Marcus. Fletcher's expression grew darker with every word. "It is a trap," he said flatly when she finished. "You know that, right? There is no way Lancaster is just going to let you go." "But what if he is?" Violet argued. "What if he really has decided it is not worth the trouble to keep me? This could be my chance to be free, Fletcher. Really and truly free. Or it could be your chance to end up dead in a ditch somewhere," Fletcher said bluntly. "Violet, please, use your head. This is the same man who beat you, who threatened to kill you if you left. He is not suddenly going to change his mind and let you walk away." "You do not know that," Violet said. even though she knew Fletcher was right. Maybe he has found someone else. Maybe he is ready to move on. And maybe he is just saying whatever he thinks will get you to come to him, Fletcher countered. Violet, I am begging you. Do not do this. Do not walk into his trap. Then what am I supposed to do? Violet asked, her voice rising with frustration. Hide on your ranch for the rest of my life? Never be able to go into town or see the world or have a real life? I cannot stay here forever, Fletcher. That is not fair to you or your mother. Why not? Fletcher asked, his voice rough. Why can you not stay here? Violet stared at him, surprised by the intensity of his question. Because, she said weakly, because I cannot just impose on your hospitality indefinitely. Because you have your own life to live. What if I want you to stay? Fletcher said. He took a step closer, his eyes locked on hers. What if I do not want you to leave? Violet's breath caught. Fletcher, you do not know what you are saying. I know exactly what I am saying, he said. I have been trying to ignore it, trying to be respectful and give you space to heal. But watching you ride away this morning, not knowing if you were going to come back, it made me realize something. I do not want to imagine my life without you in it, Violet. I think I am falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, huge and terrifying, and wonderful all at once. Violet felt tears spring to her eyes. You cannot love me, she whispered. I am married. I am broken. I have nothing to offer you. You are not broken, Fletcher said fiercely. You are bruised and you are scared, but you are not broken. And as for being married, we can fix that. We can get you a real divorce through legal channels. It will take time, but we can do it right. If that is what you want. What I want, Violet repeated. Fletcher, I want so many things I do not even know how to name them all. But most of all, I want to be free, and I want to be worthy of someone like you. You are already worthy, Fletcher said. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently cupped her face in his hands. You are strong and brave and kind. You are good with animals and good with my mother, and you make the best biscuits I have ever tasted. And when you smile, which you do not do nearly often enough, it feels like the sun coming out from behind clouds. Fletcher, Violet breathed, leaning into his touch despite herself. I know the timing is terrible, he continued. I know you need time to heal, time to figure out who you are without Lancaster controlling you. I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow, or even make me any promises. I am just asking you to stay, to give yourself a chance to see what your life could be like here, to give us a chance to see what we could be together. Violet closed her eyes, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. I am still scared, she admitted. I know, Fletcher said gently, and that is all right. You can be scared and still take the chance. You can be scared and still choose hope. Hope. The word echoed in her mind, bringing with it the image of the chestnut mare who had learned to trust again. If Hope could do it, maybe Violet could too. She opened her eyes and looked up at Fletcher, at this good, steady man who had given her shelter and safety and kindness without asking for anything in return, who had stood up to Marcus for her, who made her laugh and made her feel safe and made her believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved good things. I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. I have been trying not to, but I cannot help it. Fletcher's face transformed with joy. Really? Really, Violet confirmed. But Fletcher, I am still married, and even if I was not, I do not know how to be in a relationship that is not poisoned with fear and anger. I do not know how to trust that you will not change, that you will not become like Marcus once you feel like you own me. Then I will prove it to you, Fletcher said simply. Every single day, for as long as it takes. I will prove that I am not him, that what I feel for you is not about ownership or control. It is about partnership, about choosing to be with someone because they make you better, not because you want to make them smaller. Violet felt something break loose in her chest, something that had been holding her together through sheer force of will. She started to cry in earnest, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. And Fletcher pulled her into his arms and held her, offering no words, no platitudes, just his solid presence and the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. When she finally cried herself out, she pulled back enough to look up at him. I am not going to meet Marcus tomorrow, she said. You are right, it is a trap, and I am not going to risk everything we could have by walking into it. Fletcher smiled, relief washing over his features. "Thank you," he said. "We will figure out another way to get you free of him. The right way." "The right way," Violet agreed. Then, gathering her courage, she stood on her toes and pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek. "Thank you for believing in me, for seeing something in me worth saving." "There is everything worth saving," Fletcher said softly. He hesitated, then added, "Can I kiss you? Really kiss you?" Violet's heart skipped a beat. She wanted to say yes, wanted it more than she had wanted anything in a long time. But she was also terrified of moving too fast, of ruining this precious thing between them before it even had a chance to grow. "Not yet," she said finally. "Soon, I promise. But I need a little more time." "I can wait," Fletcher said without hesitation. "I will wait as long as you need." And looking into his eyes, Violet believed him. The next day at noon, Fletcher rode out to the Copper Ridge mine with Carlos and Ben. They watched from a distance as Marcus waited at the office, his face growing darker as the minutes ticked by and Violet failed to appear. Finally, he stormed back inside, and Fletcher allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. Violet had chosen safety over the false promise of freedom. She had chosen trust. That evening, as they all sat down to dinner, Rosa made an announcement. "I have been thinking," she said, "and I believe it is time we consulted with a lawyer about getting Violet a proper divorce. My late husband had a friend in Phoenix who specializes in these sorts of cases. I will write to him and see what needs to be done." "A real divorce?" Violet asked, hope sparking in her chest. "Is that even possible? Marcus would never agree to it." "He might not have a choice," Rosa said. "From what you have told us, you have grounds for divorce based on cruelty and abuse. It will take time, and it will not be easy, but it can be done. You do not need his permission to be free, honey. The law is on your side." Violet looked at Fletcher, who nodded encouragingly. "Ma is right. We will do this proper, through the courts. Lancaster can throw all the tantrums he wants, but at the end of the day, he cannot stop you from leaving him if the law says you have cause." For the first time since she had run away that desperate September night, Violet felt real hope take root in her heart. Not the fragile, fearful hope of someone just trying to survive, but the strong, certain hope of someone building a future. The winter months passed slowly, marked by correspondence with the lawyer in Phoenix and the gradual deepening of the relationship between Violet and Fletcher. They were careful with each other, respectful of boundaries, but the affection between them was obvious to anyone who looked. Rosa watched them with a knowing smile, pleased to see her son happy and pleased to see Violet blooming like a flower in the sun. Fletcher taught Violet how to rope cattle, laughing when she missed more often than she caught. Violet taught Fletcher how to make her mother's apple pie, which he declared the best thing he had ever eaten. They took long rides together through the desert, exploring the red rock canyons and hidden springs that dotted the landscape. They sat up late by the fire, reading poetry aloud and discussing their dreams for the future. And slowly, so slowly, Violet learned to trust again. Not just Fletcher, but herself. She learned that she was capable and strong, that she could make decisions and solve problems without someone telling her what to do. She learned that she liked who she was when she was not living in constant fear. In March of 1879, the divorce papers finally came through. Violet was legally free of Marcus Lancaster. Rosa insisted on opening a bottle of whiskey she had been saving, and they all toasted to new beginnings. That night, as Violet was getting ready for bed, there was a soft knock on her door. She opened it to find Fletcher standing there, hat in his hands as always, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Of course," Violet said, stepping aside to let him in. He came in but left the door open, mindful of propriety even now. "I wanted to wait until everything was settled," Fletcher said. "Until you were truly free and had time to figure out what you wanted. But now that the papers are final, I need to ask you something." Violet's heart started to race. "What is it?" Fletcher took a deep breath. "Violet Lancaster, soon to be Violet Lawson again. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I know we have not courted in the traditional sense, and I know you have every reason to be cautious about marriage after what you have been through. But I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you every single day that you made the right choice in trusting me." Violet felt tears spring to her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, Fletcher, I will marry you." The smile that broke across Fletcher's face was like sunrise. He stepped forward and, with infinite gentleness, took her face in his hands. "Can I kiss you now?" he asked softly. "Yes," Violet breathed. "Please." Fletcher lowered his head and kissed her, and it was everything Violet had been afraid to hope for. It was gentle and sweet and full of promise. It tasted like hope and new beginnings and a future free from fear. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I love you," Violet said. "I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes." "I love you too," Fletcher said. "And I promise you, Violet, I will spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you never have reason to be terrified of me." "I know," Violet said. And she meant it. They were married in May, in a simple ceremony at the ranch with Rosa and a few close friends in attendance. Violet wore a dress that Rosa had made for her, pale yellow like sunshine, with wildflowers in her hair. Fletcher wore his best suit and could not stop smiling the entire day. That night, as they lay together in Fletcher's room, which was now their room, Violet marveled at how different this felt from her first wedding night with Marcus. There was no fear here, no dread of what was to come, just love and trust and the certain knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be. "Are you happy?" Fletcher asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "I did not think I could ever be this happy again," Violet admitted. "After everything with Marcus, I thought that part of me was dead. But you brought me back to life, Fletcher. You and your mother and this place. You gave me back myself." "You did that on your own," Fletcher said. "I just gave you a safe place to heal. The strength was always in you, Violet. You just needed room to let it grow." Violet turned to face him, her hand resting over his heart. "What did I ever do to deserve you?" "You survived," Fletcher said simply. "You kept going even when you had every reason to give up. That is what you did to deserve happiness. You fought for it." The years that followed were the happiest of Violet's life. She and Fletcher built their life together on the ranch, working side by side through good times and bad. The first year of their marriage brought a drought that threatened the cattle, but they weathered it together, finding creative solutions and supporting each other through the stress. The second year brought record rains and excellent grazing, and the ranch prospered. In the spring of 1881, Violet gave birth to their first child, a son they named Thomas after Fletcher's father. He had his father's hazel eyes and his mother's determined chin, and both parents were instantly besotted. Rosa doted on her grandson, declaring him the most beautiful baby ever born. Marcus Lancaster never bothered them again. Violet heard through the grapevine that he had remarried, some wealthy widow from California, and she felt nothing but relief. Whatever hold he had once had over her was completely broken now. She was Violet Walsh, wife and mother and rancher, and she had built a life so full of love and purpose that there was no room left for fear. In 1883, their second child was born, a daughter they named Caroline Rose after both of her grandmothers. She was a spirited thing from the start, with bright eyes and a fearless nature that reminded Violet of Hope, the mare who had taught her to trust again. Hope was still with them, older now, but healthy and content. She had become Violet's constant companion, and Violet still rode her most days, sometimes with little Thomas balanced in front of her in the saddle, teaching him the same lessons of patience and trust that the mare had taught her. Fletcher proved himself every day to be exactly the man he had promised to be. He was patient when Violet had bad days, when old fears surfaced unexpectedly. He was supportive of her dreams, encouraging her when she started training horses professionally, developing a reputation across the territory for her skill with difficult animals. He was a wonderful father, patient and kind, and always ready with a laugh or a hug, and he loved her, not with the possessive, controlling love that Marcus had claimed to feel, but with a love that was generous and respectful and free. He loved her in a way that made her more herself, not less. A love that gave her room to grow and change and become whoever she wanted to be. Rosa lived to see 5 grandchildren born, the last being twin boys that arrived in 1888. She passed away peacefully in her sleep in the spring of 1890, surrounded by family and secure in the knowledge that her son was happy and her grandchildren were thriving. Violet mourned her deeply, this woman who had been a second mother to her, who had offered her shelter and wisdom and unconditional love when she needed it most. As the years passed, Violet and Fletcher's ranch grew and prospered. They added more land, built a larger house to accommodate their growing family, and became pillars of the old Tucson community. Violet started a program to help other women escaping difficult marriages, offering them work on the ranch and connections to lawyers who could help them get free. It was her way of paying forward the gift that Rosa and Fletcher had given her. Fletcher supported this work wholeheartedly, even though it occasionally made him unpopular with some of the more traditional ranchers in the area. But he did not care about popularity. He cared about doing what was right, about helping people who needed help, about building a world where his daughter and daughters to come would not have to live in fear. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Fletcher took Violet on a picnic to the spot where he had first taught her to rope cattle. They sat under the shade of a cottonwood tree, watching the clouds drift by, while their children played nearby under the watchful eye of a trusted ranch hand. "Do you ever regret it?" Fletcher asked suddenly. "Staying here instead of running to California like you planned? Sometimes I wonder if you feel trapped, like this life is just another kind of cage." Violet turned to look at him, surprised. "Fletcher Walsh, how can you even ask that? This life, this place, you and our children, this is everything I ever wanted and was afraid to hope for. I am not trapped. I am home. I just want to make sure you are happy," Fletcher said, "that you are choosing to be here, not just staying because you feel obligated." "I choose you every single day," Violet said firmly. She took his hand and placed it over her heart. "Every morning, when I wake up next to you, I choose this. I choose us. I choose this beautiful, messy, wonderful life we have built together. And I will keep choosing it for as long as I live." Fletcher pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "I love you, Violet Walsh." "I love you too," Violet said, "more than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone." They sat there together as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. In the distance, Violet could see their children laughing and playing, healthy and happy and safe. She could see the ranch house, solid and welcoming, smoke rising from the chimney. She could see the barn where she had first hidden, terrified and alone, not knowing that she was about to find not just shelter, but salvation. She thought about that frightened girl she had been, running through the night with nothing but the clothes on her back and the desperate hope that somewhere, somehow, there might be a place where she could be safe. That girl could never have imagined this future, could never have believed that such happiness was possible. But it was possible. Violet was living proof of that. With Fletcher's help, with Rose's wisdom, with her own strength and determination, she had transformed her life completely. She had gone from victim to survivor to thriver. She had learned to trust again, to love again, to hope again. And she had learned the most important lesson of all, that she was not defined by what had been done to her, but by what she chose to do next. That healing was possible, that love was possible, that happiness was possible, if you were brave enough to reach for it and wise enough to accept it when it was offered. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Fletcher and Violet gathered up their children and headed home together. And Violet knew, with absolute certainty, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not because it was the only option, not because she was trapped, but because she had chosen it freely. She had chosen love over fear, hope over despair, Fletcher over loneliness. And it had made all the difference. The children grew up strong and healthy, each of them inheriting their parents' best qualities. Thomas became a veterinarian, carrying on his mother's gift with animals in a different way. Caroline married a kind schoolteacher and started her own school for girls in Old Tucson, determined to give young women the education and opportunities she believed they deserved. The twins, James and Samuel, took over the ranch when Fletcher was ready to step back, running it with the same integrity and compassion their father had always shown. Fletcher and Violet grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year rather than fading. They sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset, telling stories to their grandchildren about the old days. Violet never hid the truth of how she and Fletcher had met, believing it was important for the younger generation to understand that love could rise from even the darkest circumstances. "Grandma was very brave," Fletcher would always say when they told the story. "She saved herself. I just gave her a place to rest while she did it." "Grandpa saved me too," Violet would always counter. "He showed me what real love looks like. He taught me that I deserve better than what I had settled for." "You both saved each other," their their grandchildren would chorus, having heard the story many times but never tiring of it. And it was true. They had saved each other, in all the ways that mattered. Fletcher had given Violet shelter and safety and unconditional love. Violet had given Fletcher purpose and partnership, and a family to cherish. Together, they had built something beautiful and lasting, a legacy of love and compassion that would endure long after they were gone. When Violet was 73, she fell ill with pneumonia. The doctors did what they could, but her body was tired, ready to rest. Fletcher never left her side during those final days, holding her hand and reading her favorite poetry, reminding her of all the beautiful moments they had shared. "I am not afraid," Violet told him one evening as the sun was setting. "I lived a good life, Fletcher, a happy life, because of you." "Because of us," Fletcher corrected gently. "We did this together, remember?" "Together," Violet agreed, smiling. "Always together." She passed peacefully that night, Fletcher's hand in hers, surrounded by their children and grandchildren. And though Fletcher grieved her loss deeply, he also felt a profound gratitude for the 46 years they had been given together. Not everyone got a love like theirs, a love that transformed and healed and made everything better. Fletcher lived another 5 years after Violet's death, spending his time with his children and grandchildren, teaching the younger generation how to run the ranch and passing on the values that he and Violet had always held dear: kindness, compassion, the importance of helping those in need, the belief that everyone deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. When Fletcher finally passed at the age of 78, he was buried next to Violet on a hillside overlooking the ranch, under the shade of a cottonwood tree. Their children made sure the graves were always tended, always adorned with fresh wildflowers in the spring, the same kind Violet had worn in her hair on their wedding day. And the ranch continued, generation after generation, a testament to what two people could build when they chose to trust, to hope, to love. The story of how Fletcher found Violet hiding in his barn became family legend, passed down through the years as a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, and that choosing kindness and compassion could change not just one life, but many. The Walsh Ranch still stands today, more than a century later, run by the great-great-grandchildren of Fletcher and Violet. And on quiet evenings when the sun is setting and the air is soft with the promise of spring, some say you can still feel their presence there. The cowboy who gave her shelter and the woman who taught him the true meaning of courage, together, always together, in the land they loved and the life they built with their own hands and hearts. It was a love story for the ages, born in fear and desperation, but transformed into something beautiful and enduring. A reminder that healing is possible, that trust can be rebuilt, that love can triumph over even the darkest past, and that sometimes the person you least expect can become the person you cannot imagine living without. Fletcher and Violet Walsh lived and loved and left behind a legacy that would endure for generations. They proved that one act of kindness, one decision to help someone in need, could ripple out in ways impossible to predict or measure. They showed that real love is not about ownership or control, but about partnership and mutual respect and choosing each other every single day. And they lived happily ever after, not because their life was perfect or without challenges, but because they faced everything together, hand in hand, heart to heart, building something stronger than fear, more powerful than pain, more lasting than time itself. Their story ended not with drama or tragedy, but with peace and satisfaction and the certain knowledge that they had lived well, loved deeply, and made a difference in the world. And really, what more could anyone ask for than that? The end.